In today's episode, we'll be discussing about the movie called Sideways. This is a movie which came out in 2004. It's a movie directed by Alexander Pine and starring Paul Giamatti as Miles, Thomas Hayden Church as Jack, Virginia Madsen as Maya, and Sandra Oh as This movie is based on the book written by Rex Pickett and of the same name, and the story basically revolves around these four characters called Maya, Stephanie, Jack, and Miles. So the beginning of the movie, we get to see about the friendship of Jack and Miles, who are pretty much the center characters of this whole story. So Jack is this guy who's due to get married in 1 week's time, and Miles is his friend who have been both have been friends right from the college days, and he's a divorced guy, and he writes this book, and he's an author, so he writes this book pretty much loosely based on himself, but he finds it very difficult to publish it because not many people are probably interested in reading the story. And as we progress into the movie, hear his agent saying about how the publishing industry has lost taste. It's not anymore about quality or great books. It's all about marketing and what is gonna sell and what people want to read. So yeah, he's a guy who's pretty much a victim for what's happening in the world. That's probably people resorting to things which are not that great, like people becoming more tasteless in their choices. Probably he considers himself to be a victim of that, and despite of whatever is going on in his life, whether on a professional front or on a personal front, he he puts everything aside and says, look, Jack, you're gonna get married in a week's time. I'm gonna give you the best bachelor week ever. So he promises his friend that they're gonna have a good time, a really good time. So Miles is someone who's really into wine a lot. So he's just obsessed with the whole concept of wine and wine tasting. And he's not just obsessed, like just normal obsessed, but he's pretty good with it. Like he really understands his wine. He's quite proficient with it. So yeah, the ideal thing that Miles chooses to do with his friend for the next 1 week is to go across Santa Barbara County and do some good wine tasting. So yeah, even though he doesn't really care about what Jack really needs, he just says, Jack, okay, we're gonna go there, we're gonna have a great time, we're gonna have a lot of drinks, and yeah. So they just start their journey to this wonderful wine tasting expedition. Jack, I believe, throughout the movie, as you can see, is not that much into wine tasting. He's more about, I just have 1 week left to get married, so I better get laid, before I get married or something. So, and also at the same time, on the back of his head, he looks at his friend Miles, who's like this very, very depressed soul. Like, he I don't know, you can't really see a much more depressed person, who's trying to take a friend on a bachelor party or something like that. So I think Giamatti definitely does complete justice to this character, and you can see that the pain, the struggle, the awkwardness, and the aloofness in his eyes. And so yeah, somewhere in the back of the head, Jack also has this, that okay, look, I need to get this guy laid, I need to get him alive. He just has to live his life. He can't just throw away everything, just pondering over what has already happened. So yes, Jack is more so set on getting himself laid and getting Miles laid, where Miles is more so into, yeah, no, I'm gonna taste a lot of different wines. That's pretty much what's running in Miles' head. So yes, these two people with really contrasting, objectives, uh, start this journey, and I think across the journey and throughout the movie, I think there are such beautiful moments. I personally learned a lot about wine tasting. I'm not someone who really is acquainted with the whole concept of wine tasting, except for I have had a few, probably wines in my life, and I don't really know much about it because, yeah, in my culture you don't really see too much of wines and things. Yeah, I learned a lot about wine tasting, and it's a nice movie. It gives you an insight into what it is to grow grapes, and what it is to really how what it is to be very passionate about wines. And it also is like a more of an American tourism sort of a movie as well, where you get to know about all of those wonderful places that you can visit. So it's a beautiful thing. It's every scene is just so beautiful. And so while they're on this journey, and while Miles is on the lookout for the best wine he can probably find, and Jack is on the lookout for the best, yeah, opportunity he can find to get laid, they do go into this restaurant, and they see this beautiful waitress by name Maya. And while Jack is trying, probably thinking of hitting on her, Miles comes, open and says that, look, I know her. This is the place I dine pretty much every time I visit this place. So as a result, Jack thinks this is the right thing for him to do. This is the right thing. No, he need to really somehow get fix Maya and Miles together. That's the only way he could get his pal back. That's the only way he could make him feel better about his life. So while Jack is persuading Miles to pursue Maya, so yeah, well, Miles, of course, being Miles, is very awkward and just, I don't think, you can very clearly see he's not interested. I mean, he is interested, but he's not interested in taking any kind of a step in that direction. So while this is happening, and while we see a glimmer of hope that probably Miles and Maya are going to be there together, then next thing we know is that Jack meets this another really, really, tomboyish woman, played by Sandra Ho, called Stephanie. And she's this wine pouring girl, and Jack really is completely smitten by her, is like lusting after her. He really wants her, and then he just, he inquires with her about whether she knows Maya and everything. And fortunately, the stars are in the right direction for him. Everything works. She says, yeah, I know Maya. And so immediately he seals a second date, a double date, in fact. Yeah, and they all meet together in a restaurant where, and yes, they just, and just before they could all go on a restaurant date, actually, Jack comes open to Miles and says that Miles, wife, his ex-wife, is married. And that's when Miles just, all hell breaks loose, and Miles is in this all completely depressed person. I mean, he was on the verge of depression. Now he's already, he's yeah, he's into it now. So you see Miles just completely losing it. And then you see the classic drunken dial scene over there. And yeah, it's filled with small things. It's filled with simple stuff, not too high-handed things, not like, oh my god, I never thought this guy is gonna do this. No, you see simple things. But the beauty of the whole movie is that, the dialogues, the conversations, the acting is just stupendous. It's amazing. And so yeah, you see the scene where he just he drinks and he dials his ex-wife, and he has this complete breakdown, and then he revives himself, and then he realizes probably, and then the very night, you see Maya and Miles when they go to Stephanie's house for dessert, and you see them having this conversation about wine, and how they try to relate what they love in wine with themselves. And that is one of the most beautiful piece of conversation you'll ever hear from any movie, from any sort of literary work. It is amazing. Like the way Miles describes himself to be this vulnerable guy, and he, yeah, juxtaposes that with, a wine. And at the same time, the way Maya says about how she got into wine and why she likes wine and what it teaches her about. It's one of the most erudite, most mature, the most beautiful conversation. And taking from there, finally Miles realizes he actually likes Maya and he should make a move. And yeah, they do make a move, and eventually you see them really having a good time. But finally, of course, by a slip of tongue, Miles is forced to tell Maya that Jack is actually, due to get married in 1 week's time, and that he's just trying to have a fling with, of course, Stephanie. And that's when, that's probably what breaks it off for Maya. She cannot bear it that her friend is being deceived by this man. So yeah, she also takes Miles to be this con man along with his friend, and then they have this whole thing about how then what happens after that, what happens after this break off, and does Mile and Maya get back together? What happens with Jack, his fiance Stephanie, and everything is definitely what you need to look forward to. It's definitely amazing. It's completely worth a watch. In fact, worth many, many watches, because I saw it and I'm trust me, I'm gonna watch it many more times because it's a beautiful movie which I don't think I can ever get enough of. So yeah, this is pretty much the whole story of Sideway. I'm not giving away the ending because I think, yeah, we gotta really work it out. We have to go out there and watch it. You can't just expect everything in a go. So yes, you'll be thanking me if you really watch this movie, because it's a wonderful, wonderful movie, and it's one of those gems. You don't really find them too many times. It's like a real gem of a movie, I believe, and I love it. I just love it. I think one of my favorite scenes has to be the whole Maya and Miles conversation scenes. Every time there's Maya and Miles having this conversation, I love those scenes. And I also like one of my favorite scenes also is in the initial beginning of the movie. You see one of the friend of Mile, when Mile just says him about, what do you like? Do you like fiction? You like non-fiction? And there's this guy who's writing, pretty much his autobiography. And then you have the other guy who says, look, I don't read non-fiction. I mean, I don't read fiction because, I like nonfiction. Why waste time reading something which someone else creates and not true, rather than just learn something about the world? Wow, I really like that line. I know it's not that huge significant line, but I think it meant too much for me. So, yeah, it's a wonderful movie. I think you all should definitely go give it a watch. It's a Yeah, should we watch it along with the family? I wouldn't say watch it along with your kids and things. No, should you watch it with your friends and yourself? Of course you should. It's beautiful. It'll definitely make you fall in love with the characters and wine. If nothing, it made me fall in love with the whole concept of wine tasting, and I also ended up taking a whole course about it. So that's how much it really inspired me. So yeah, go out.